many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one person might be what makes a game great to another. In my opinion, a game can typically be graded on 5 main categories: characters, story, exploration, combat, and music. Without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. I am so excited to finally be talking about 358 because to this day it is the only game in the series that I have not physically played, which is really funny considering 358 was also the first piece of Kingdom Hearts media that I really remembered because my big sister was obsessed with Roxas and Xion back in the day, in particular Xion. I did watch the movie version of it that came with the 1.5 release, but I have not played the actual game myself. I know that you miss out on a lot of little moments with the organization if you don't play the actual game, and that is definitely true in my opinion. The only real thing I know about Days going into it is that the controls can be a bit janky, and knowing both this and the fact that I'm a chronic completionist, I still decided to play the game on proud mode. So with all that blibber blabber out of the way, let's get to talking about the game. Our game begins with the awakening of Roxas, a new nobody who, unlike the others, has no memories of his somebody self. Also, he can wield the Keyblade too. Now, seeing as Days came out in 2009 after Kingdom Hearts 2, at this point in the series we know that Roxas is the nobody of Sora, stemming from the incident in Kingdom Hearts 1 when Sora stabbed himself with the Keyblade of Hearts and turned himself into a Heartless. Roxas himself is fairly clueless about everything because he is just a baby, and we spend the first few weeks learning about the mission of Organization 13, which is to collect hearts using the Keyblade. It is also during this introduction that we're given the rundown of Pure Heartless versus Emblem Heartless, and I wanted to give that quick explanation because I can't remember if it's explained somewhere else this directly besides in the Ansem reports in Kingdom Hearts 1 that are actually optional to read, so not everybody has read them. Essentially, Pure Heartless don't release hearts upon being killed because they actually consume hearts. This can be backed up by Ansem's reports in Kingdom Hearts 1 when he says the Heartless consume their prey, which vanish without a trace. The Emblem Heartless, however, were created artificially by Ansem himself, the only difference between them and Pure Heartless being the emblem marking them. However, as I mentioned, pure-blooded Heartless are the pure darkness of someone's heart, as in there's nothing left to be released upon death. Because Emblem Heartless are artificial, their hearts are simply encased in darkness, which means there is something left over when they're killed. Zexion kind of backs this up as well by telling us that if a non-Keyblade wielder were to kill an Emblem Heartless, then the heart would be released into the world until it eventually remanifested as an Emblem Heartless again. So TLDR, Pure Heartless are pure darkness that don't possess hearts. Emblem Heartless are artificial Heartless created by encasing a heart in darkness. During our first week, we learn of the 14th member of the organization, a mysterious hooded person named Xion. For the next little bit, Roxas and we, the player, learn that our job is simply to collect those hearts so that we can form something called Kingdom Hearts, that will allegedly give the organization hearts of their own and make them complete. Sounds simple enough, right? So Axel basically takes us under his wing and he explains to us what friendship is, and guys, they're so cute. I love Axel so much, he's so awesome. But then the Castle Oblivion people get sent to Castle Oblivion, and if you know that Axel is one of the people sent to Castle Oblivion to get rid of the traitors, aka the events of Chain of Memories. He leaves Roxas behind, which makes him a little sad because, like, goddamn, Axel was his only friend. After that, we start going on missions with Xion, which was so fucking funny to me, guys, because, like, Sayek's unironically sending these 2 not even a month-old children out into the wilderness and being like, Roxas, you're in charge. Like, sir, he is 22 days old, calm the fuck down. Anywho, as Roxas and Xion work together, Xion begins to develop a bit more, shall we say. After the first mission, she starts talking. After the second, she gets her face reveal, and after the third, it is revealed that Xion can also wield the Keyblade. Roxas basically adopts her in the same way Axel adopted him, and they become the cutest pair of friends. And then, because Roxas is feeling a modicum of happiness and that simply won't do, he finds out the next day that at least one of the Castle Oblivion people might be dead. During the mission that day, Roxas collapses. The reason for this is because the events in Chain of Memories have started, and Naminé has begun to mess with Sora's memories, which led to Roxas sleeping for essentially the entire time Chain of Memories is happening. Xion visits him like the sweetheart she is and gives him seashells, one for every mission she goes on. When Roxas wakes up, the seashells lead him to remembering very briefly Sora and Kairi. We find out for sure that Axel is dead, and Roxas experiences grief and is very sad. But then, as we know, Axel isn't actually dead, and look how happy my boy is when he comes back! We spend a few days hanging with Axel, but Roxas is still really worried about Xion, who has been missing for the last 10 days. Axel pulls some strings with his boyfriend Saïx, I am kidding, please don't cancel me, and their mission for the day ends up being to find Xion. They do, and we learn that the reason for Xion's prolonged absence was that she lost control over the Keyblade and is very afraid because she has been fed the nobody propaganda since her birth, and feels that she is completely useless without the ability to collect hearts. Axel suggests that Roxas pairs up with Xion from then on so that he can collect hearts for her. And I really want to point out the very cool detail that Axel cannot see Xion's face until after the two become friends. Roxas and Xion try to ask Saïx about working together, and he shuts that shit down without hesitation, but then Axel meddles, as he is wont to do, and Saïx lets them do what we want. We continue in that manner, just going to different worlds and doing our thing until day 94, when Xemnas summons us all and shows us that Kingdom Hearts has finally appeared in the sky. After that day's mission at Beast's Castle, Roxas questions Axel once more about what Kingdom Hearts actually is, and we get similar answers of it just being the heart of all hearts and the collection of hearts Roxas and Xion have been collecting. Roxas is unsatisfied with his answer because it's bullshit basically, and he's never had a heart before, so how is he supposed to know what he's missing? He starts to feel bothered by the fact that he's fighting for something he doesn't understand. In the end, Axel reassures him that they're fighting because they want to know what the whole Kingdom Hearts deal is about, and that Roxas will understand better when he has a heart. Roxas begrudgingly accepts that answer. Shortly after that, Saïx puts a hard cap on us being allowed to work together, so Xion and Roxas panic for a second, but thankfully Axel comes to our rescue once more, and Saïx let it slide, but only for one more day, and it's during this mission that Xion regains control of her Keyblade, and this is also the mission that has the famous "that's a stick" Roxas line. So anyways, Roxas and Xion go their separate ways once more. The next place we head to is Olympus Coliseum with Xigbar, who has the biggest chill uncle vibes ever in this game, and we end up staying late, so Xion and Axel have ice cream together by themselves, and Xion tells Axel that sometimes when she's with him and Roxas, or when she's by the sea, she hears another person's voice. She also expresses that she feels weird about the memories being hers. Axel gets all stiff with her and doesn't really have any answers for her, which we can kind of assume that he's lying, you know, because Axel tends to do that where he gets all like stiff when he's trying to hide something because he doesn't really like lying directly. He kind of lies more by omission. After that, the organization goes on vacation for one day. It's literally the beach episode, and Axel trying to explain to Roxas that his job during a vacation is to not have a job was so cute and precious. I actually love my boys. Axel informs the two that he'll be going on a top secret mission, presumably to Castle Oblivion, seeing as Saïx had a little talk with Axel a few days prior. The two continue working on missions separately, and Roxas learns from Xaldin that an imposter who wears the organization coat has surfaced. After Roxas' first mission in Halloween Town, he goes to the clock tower to get ice cream as usual, and Axel shows up back from his mission. Xion doesn't come that day, and we see her in her room by herself, upset. She had a run-in with the mysterious imposter who called her and her Keyblade a sham. The next day, Roxas walks in to Saïx telling Xion they can't waste any more chances on her and that she's just a mistake. Which, come on dude, I know that you're mad that Roxas and Xion are taking Axel away from you, but you don't have to be a dick. We also see that Saïx cannot see Xion's face. Xion runs off after that. Roxas spends the next few days keeping Axel's company because Xion is nowhere to be seen. Roxas asks Axel if he has anything he couldn't bear to lose after one of his missions at Beast's Castle. Roxas wants to know why he doesn't have something like that, and Axel once more tells him it's because he doesn't have a heart. They're really hammering how important this heart thing is to make a person a person. Roxas makes the argument that even though Demyx doesn't have a heart, he would be upset if someone took his sitar. Axel makes a point to say that that's not really the same thing, and then goes on to say that his past is probably the closest thing nobodies have to things they can't afford to lose. And while Roxas is upset that he can't remember his past, he affirms that he couldn't bear to lose his memories of Axel or Xion. Roxas also says he feels scared at the thought of losing them, which shouldn't be possible because nobodies shouldn't be able to feel anything. While on his mission the next day, Roxas spots Xion up on the clock tower. She apologizes to him for running off and explains to him that she messed up on a mission. She was supposed to take out the organization imposter, but he beat her, which was the reason why Saïx went off on her. Roxas suggests they work together that day in an attempt to make her feel better, and y'all, they're so cute! They even go to get ice cream together, but of course Xion is still upset because every blue-haired character in this game is a fucking dick to her. This is also our first full look at what actually happened with the imposter, and at this point we know it's Riku. And honestly, I love the game for the fact that on one hand Riku is the antagonist of this game, and here we see it in the way he speaks to Xion, but at the same time he ate that shit up. And like, we as the player know that Riku is looking out for Sora, but at the same time, the game has masterfully woven the narrative in a way that by the time Riku is even mentioned, we've already seen that Roxas and Xion and all the nobodies aren't these terrible villains, and they're not these empty husks or horrible mistakes that Diz tries to convince us of either. They're just people. They play poker together and hang out together, and we just saw Roxas feels fear and Xion feels upset, and they're people who are just starting to come to terms with understanding the world around them. I think waiting until like day 151 to introduce Riku was genius because it gave us enough time to root for Roxas and Xion and Axel and give us that sense of conflict. Roxas once more asks Xion what's wrong, and she starts asking him the same questions Roxas was asking Axel about hearts and why they need them. Xion also tells him about how she's been having weird dreams, and she feels a sense of dread. Roxas reassures her that Xigbar called them exceptional, and Xion insists that she's a mistake and not the same as Roxas. She leaves before Roxas can say anything else. After that, Roxas continues to go on missions on his own, continuing to develop his relationship with various characters and learning about concepts like love and all the other things you allegedly can't do without a heart. Xion is notably absent during this time, and we learn from Luxord that Xion has been asleep since her failed missions. And also, I know that Luxord's name has now confirmed to be Luxord, and I will never be calling him that. He is Luxord to me always, I'm sorry. Roxas continues to work missions, and he gets bullied by kids in Halloween Town, and he meets Tinkerbell, and he has all these cool, fun experiences he wants to tell Axel and Xion. He also brings Xion a seashell every day like the sweet boy he is because he has to return the favor, and honestly, thank God that he has Axel there because otherwise he would be so lonely. After 20 days, Xion finally wakes up and insists on going with Axel and Roxas on their mission, and holy shit guys, the absolute disrespect Saïx has for Xion is fucking evil. Like bro, she's not an it, she's not a creature, calm down and stop calling her useless and broken. She's a she's a person, leave her be. I get you're mad that your boyfriend is pulling away from you, but maybe you have to look inside, maybe it has something to do with you. Anyways, Xion does end up coming with us on that mission, but she passes out midway through because she remembers Sora and Kairi and the moment when Roxas was created, when Sora stabs himself with the Keyblade of Hearts in Kingdom Hearts 1. Saïx, of course, has something to say about that too, and when Axel tells him to keep his mouth shut, I tell you the room cheered. We also get our first glimpse of Naminé post Chain of Memories, and we see her drawing a picture of Xion, Axel, and Roxas, meaning we can surmise she has some hand in the memories Xion and Roxas are, well, remembering. Roxas and Xion get back on the mission grind, and honestly, Roxas' time with Axel is always so sweet, and I actually started to like the missions he did with Luxord where he learned about what curiosity is. I think it's really cool seeing Roxas learn about all these concepts and establish himself as his own person. Axel, meanwhile, begins to look into Naminé, starting with the research Vexen left behind. We also finally catch another glimpse of what Naminé is up to, and we learn that she's having trouble putting Sora's memories back together because a few of them have gone missing. Naminé implies that, quote, if his memories become her memories, she will never survive it, end quote. Meaning we can surmise that Xion is somehow siphoning Sora's memories, most likely through Roxas. As the days go by, we begin to notice a decline with Xion. She's quiet, and she faints sometimes, and she's just all around spacey. Roxas and Axel both notice, but Axel tells Roxas she'll get through it and sort of brushes it off. Xion accesses the organization's main computer, which leads her to Castle Oblivion. She runs into Axel there, who tries to keep her out of the castle, presumably because he knows that her being there will only accelerate her demise at the hand of Sora's memories. Regardless, Xion pushes past him and stays in Castle Oblivion to learn about who she is. She finds out that the person she's remembering isn't actually her, as we know. The only explanation Roxas gets as to where she is that Axel tells him she's on an important mission. That little lie is quickly exposed when Xemnas calls a meeting to discuss the fact that Xion went missing. He basically says that no one is to look for her without his permission and that she'll fulfill her purpose when the time comes. Roxas is obviously upset about that. Meanwhile, Axel immediately starts scheming to make sure the right time never comes so things can stay the same. And guys, I'll talk more about this in Axel's section of the video, but he has literally put himself in the middle of everything throughout this game and he has nothing to show for it 99% of the time. This is my poor man. Anyways, we keep doing missions as we are wont to do, and we have to fight the most cancerous boss, but afterwards we get the real tea. Roxas goes to the beach for his mission on day 276 and sees a girl who resembles Xion, obviously Kairi. Then we get this whole look into what's going on in Xion's head, who is having this full-on identity crisis. She fades between Roxas, Riku, and Sora, like she's a mess, like she doesn't even know. So she's presumably on the Destiny Islands with Riku, at least that's what looked real to me. Naminé then tells Riku and us, by proxy, that her attempt to piece together Sora's memory is getting really messy because of Roxas and Xion, and how determined they are to be their own people. In the end, Naminé tells Riku that for Sora's memory to be completed in the desired time frame, both of them are going to have to go away, as she says. You know, die, basically. Probably why Riku's with Xion in the first place. On the flip side, despite Xemnas' orders, Axel decides he's going to start looking for Xion between missions, and Roxas enthusiastically agrees. Unfortunately, the two aren't able to find her, and Roxas insists that the only place they haven't looked is Castle Oblivion. Axel divulges to Roxas that Xion is from Castle Oblivion, which is why she was asking about it, and the two even manage to get assigned on a mission there the next day to look for Riku. Super unfortunately, the minute Roxas steps into the Castle Oblivion, he is flooded with memories and promptly passes the fuck out. Axel takes Roxas to Twilight Town to recover, where they run into Xion and the imposter, aka Riku. Xion immediately disappears into a corridor of darkness, but we give chase to Riku. Eventually we lose sight of him, and Roxas questions why Xion would feel the need to run from him. Xion is obviously working with Riku to some extent at this point, and Riku asks her if she's considering going back with Roxas and Axel, to which she doesn't answer. The next day, Saïx insists that Xion has betrayed the organization and orders Axel to bring her back, or, if he's unable to just outright kill her. He orders Roxas to eliminate Riku. Roxas freaks out and asks Axel if he's really going to hurt Xion, and Axel, my beautiful boy, bless his heart, is just openly defiant at this point. He was literally like, nah, I'll think of something clever, don't worry. We end up chasing someone around Twilight Town. We think it's Riku, but it turns out to be Xion. Roxas begs her to come back, and she says she can't, quite vehemently. Axel watches on until Xion draws her Keyblade on Roxas, and then he steps in and knocks her out and brings her back to the organization. And this part of the game is really interesting because we know that Axel is trying to prevent the right time from happening so he doesn't lose Xion and Roxas, but he's also kind of acting dickish in Roxas' perspective because Roxas doesn't know that the road Xion's walking will ultimately lead to her demise. It's juicy, that's all I'll say. We add another layer to that when Saïx gets all involved, making it sound like the actions Axel is taking will save Roxas, basically in a you can only choose one of them situation. But that whole cutscene could also have a double meaning because Saïx kind of seems to not really consider friendships with nobodies to be real, and maybe he's asking Axel to choose him over them, aka the real friendship over the make-believe one, which damn. Saïx also name drops him here, which adds to my feelings of him meaning himself because he's referencing the past and the fact that, we were friends first, bro. But I could be completely wrong and he could just be referring to Roxas as the real friendship. But I really think that Saïx and Axel's relationship in this game is very interesting, and it's a lot juicier in the game version versus the 1.5 version. Anyways, Roxas is still trying to locate Xion, and he even ends up questioning Xemnas, who tells him to stop distracting himself with her and this Sora person and get back to work. Classic boss. He does promise that Xion will be back at work tomorrow, so there is that to say the least. Roxas mentions in his diary that he's at the point where both Xion and Axel aren't recognizable to him, and they're both acting all weird. And holy shit, it's because they're both caught up on opposite ends of the political list of intrigue, and both Xion and Axel are trying to protect him from it, so they're trying to shield him from all of this that's happening, and so my poor boy feels left out. We get a sneaky cutaway to Xemnas and Saïx and learn that the Xion project was simply a means to get access to another Keyblade, but things went awry when Sora through Roxas gave Xion a sense of identity. This is good for the organization though, because Xemnas realizes that by keeping Sora's memories trapped, he won't wake up. And as long as that pesky gadfly, I love Xemnas' insults even though I don't know what they mean half the time, Riku stays away from them, everything will be a-okay. Everything does not end up, in fact, being a-okay. Roxas ends up remembering more stuff and feeling very weak, Meanwhile, Shion becomes an absolute beast. I think we can draw some conclusions about why that is. One's getting weaker while one gets stronger. Obviously, she's, siphoning. Both of my children are very worried about one another. Roxas has beef with Axel for getting violent with Shion, and Shion tries to convince Roxas that Axel did what he had to do and to forgive him. Shion and Axel finally have a chat, and guys, Axel drank some of Sayex's Kool-Aid because he asked Shion if they forgot to build her with common sense, which is so rude. We get the full confirmed drop that Shion is a replica who was built to copy Roxas's powers, and her getting stronger while he gets weaker means she's taking more from Roxas than she should. I was about to start beefing with Axel for being rude because, damn bro, I know you're caught between a rock and a hard place, but there is no need to treat my girl that way. But then, when Shion asks him what to do, he tells her he can't make that decision for her because in his eyes, she's not just a puppet, and that she's his best friend. And I forgave him because he does care. Also, Shion mentions seeing a guy who looks just like Roxas and asks Axel if he is who I think he is. And I feel like at the time, this was meant to be interpreted as a reference to Sora because Birth by Sleep was not out yet. But then it cuts to Xigbar listening in, and the fact that she's talking to Axel, who also did know Ven, makes me feel like it was actually just an early reference to Ventus. And I know people love to think that Kingdom Hearts story isn't consistent and whatever, but bro, why are they setting shit up back in 2009 for things that are relevant in Kingdom Hearts 3 that comes out in 2019? That's a full ass decade. That is crazy. How much harder does Xigbar have to imply that he knows more than what he's saying? Because straight up, he says things to Roxas like, girls her age have many faces, you better be careful. Which okay bro. Anyways, Xemnas and Sayax 100% know what's happening with the whole siphoning situation, but Xemnas straight up says that we only need one of them, so let them duke it out, and that was the plan. Between missions, we see Shion's full talk with Riku, where he tells her that she has Sora's memories and belongs with Sora, yada yada. Shion asks him how she's supposed to know where she belongs and whether or not she's making the right decision by either rejoining with Sora or not. Riku tells her to consider everyone while making her decision, not just herself and her friends, and then gives her a few days to think it over, which is well played because we all know Riku is being gentle because he's not an asshole, and obviously this gentler approach does end up working with Shion, but straight up, if Shion had said, no, I'm just gonna stay with my friends, he would have hunted her ass down like he did to Roxas. He does not care. Roxas and Shion do end up fighting because the organization sets up a mission where they fight thinking that they're fighting a Heartless. It's kind of like an illusion type thing. Luckily, Axel stops them before anything bad happens to either of them. The trio spend one more day together before all hell breaks loose. Shion is sent on a mission with Axel and Xigbar, and she kicks Xigbar's ass and tells Axel she's leaving. When Xigbar sees her, he sees Ventus, and when Axel sees her, he sees someone else who we don't get to see yet, but I'm assuming is Sora. Axel lets her go, and Roxas and Sayax are pissed about that, but when Axel tries to explain to Roxas that Shion is a replica, a duplicate of him, and that if she doesn't stop her little siphoning thing, then he won't be him anymore, Roxas doesn't give a shit and promptly tells him that Shion is a person, and he runs off. Xemnas finally reveals to the rest of the organization that Shion is a replica and explains the whole replica program and how they used it to gain access to the Keyblade's power. Essentially, Shion was the Plan C. He also explains how Shion developing her own consciousness was not in the cards and had never happened before, or at least it hadn't been reported. And yeah, I get that, but at the same time, I feel like it's definitely the latter, not being reported, because I feel like while Repliku definitely didn't develop enough of his own self to give himself a unique appearance, he definitely was different from Riku and had his own intentions and even personality. They literally had to factory reset him because he was getting too rambunctious. So I feel like the organization just hates reporting shit to each other because they like to keep secrets from one another because they all have their own intentions. After all of that, Axel is ordered to bring Shion back, and Roxas begs him not to. Axel tells him that if he doesn't, then the organization will probably just eliminate him. And then Roxas changes his request to not hurting her because he doesn't want Axel to, be eliminated. He questions Axel about how long he's known Shion being a replica, and after finding out that Axel knew far longer than Roxas did, he decides that he can't trust him anymore. Shion finds Riku and tells him she's made up her mind and asks him what to do, and he directs her to Naminé. The next day, Roxas goes on his mission and questions why he even wants to go back to the organization. He wonders if he belongs anywhere or with anyone, and then, like, my poor baby cries. Cutting back to Riku, we find out that he keeps his whole blindfold thing happening because it helps him control the darkness inside, and otherwise he takes on the appearance of Ansem's Seeker of Darkness. He tells Mickey he's gonna have to face a member of the organization soon in order to restore Sora's memories, and warns Mickey that the fight will either kill him or make him not the same. So Mickey is the last hope for guiding Sora and company when they wake up. Roxas finally decides to confront Axel, and when he doesn't get the answers he's looking for, he escapes the castle in hopes of finding the reasons about why he can wield the Keyblade and who he actually is. Roxas ends up in Twilight Town because, let's be real, there isn't really anywhere he can go, and Xion finds him on the clock tower. She tells him that she plans to go back to Sora, and when Roxas sees her face, she looks like Sora and not herself. Naminé tells us that because Xion is built completely on Sora's memory of Kairi, that if those memories return to Sora, no one will remember her anymore. Xion goes through with this plan anyways because she doesn't want Xemnas to have his way and decides that with Sora is where she belongs. Xion's last request of us before disappearing is that we set Kingdom Hearts free. Roxas returns to the world that never was to do just that and is stopped by none other than Riku. The two fight, and the only way for Riku to win is by unleashing his dark powers and taking on the appearance of Ansem Sod, assumably permanently. Diz and Riku take Roxas away, and that leads us right into the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. I have to say that, like most Kingdom Hearts side games, the story of Days is very strong. It's an incredibly compelling tale of self-discovery and friendship and finding where you belong, and it's all around just a 10 out of 10. It also just has, like, just the right amount of, like, intrigue and mystery throughout it. It's a banger. It's a banger. And that brings me into the character section. I wanted to start off this section by saying that while I knew that actually playing Days versus watching the cutscenes that come with 1.5 would definitely give me a better view on the characters, I was not prepared for how much it did change for me. I'm going to talk about it most of all for Saïx and Axel and the other organization members as well, but I will start by talking about my main Blorbo, so let's start off with Roxas. Roxas is our main protagonist of the game and a very special nobody. What makes him special? Well, he's Sora's nobody for one, but he doesn't look like Sora, which is different from every other nobody. Furthermore, unlike all of the other nobodies, Roxas has no recollection of his past as a somebody at all. When Roxas is born, he is taken in by Xemnas and the rest of Organization 13 due to his ability to wield a Keyblade and thus collect hearts. When Roxas is first taken in, he barely talks and is compared to a zombie. Axel takes him under his wing and tries to answer his questions. I think what makes Roxas such a compelling character is the fact that we are given piece by piece how Roxas views the world and his understanding of it. Every single world he goes to and mission he does and every single person he meets teaches him another core concept that he takes in and alters his view of the world. He learns about friendship from Axel, Hayner, Pence, and Olette, but mainly from Axel. He learns that friends are people you eat ice cream with and joke around with, and he imparts that knowledge onto Xion, who is somebody he does that stuff with as well. In Agrabah, from Genie and Aladdin, Xion and Roxas learn about how important friendship is and having people check on you and that you can count on. In the Colosseum, Roxas learns about expectations and having faith in someone. He essentially learns about what it means to be proud of someone. In Beast Castle, Roxas learns about having things that are too precious to lose, and how for him that thing is his memories of Axel and Xion. He learns about love. He also learns the art of manipulation from Xaldin because holy shit, someone hurt Xaldin in the past, guys. Like, he was fucking nuts. He was so manipulative and just like, who hurt you, bro? Jesus. In Wonderland, Roxas learns about curiosity about the world around him and how curiosity can lead to all sorts of insane situations. In Neverland, he learns about belief in yourself and trusting others, and he even makes Axel believe in him enough that they fly together in one mission. Every single mission shows us Roxas's views of the world around him and how he comes to understand it. The game makes it very clear that Roxas isn't Sora, not in the same way that Axel is Lee, for example. Despite not understanding a lot of things like why they need hearts or who he is or where he belongs, he values his life for what it is and he makes it his own. He loves being around his friends and having ice cream with them and laughing with them. He wants things to stay the same way and fears things changing, very similar to Kairi in Kingdom Hearts 1. The thing that Days does really well is similar to Crisis Core. Days came out a few years after Kingdom Hearts 2, so most people go into Days knowing the game is a tragedy. We know that things don't end well for Roxas and Xion, but we don't know how or why. The game sets up Roxas and Xion in a way where we care about them. We have a vested interest in them and their friendships and them not getting doomed by the narrative. The game, through Axel and Diz and various other characters, tries to convince us that nobodies cannot feel, and they're not real, and they don't deserve to be people, and they're just these horrible, awful, useless mistakes. But then it contradicts itself with Roxas. We see his frustration, we see his happiness, his sadness, his fear. We see him feel betrayed and hurt and vulnerable, and we see his anger and his loss. The game makes us care, and it makes us root for Roxas. We want him to succeed, to get Axel and Xion back. And when he loses Xion, he sets off to set Kingdom Hearts free because she asked him to. That was her dying wish. So when Roxas loses to Riku in the end, we feel it. This is someone we were told time and time again doesn't have feelings, doesn't deserve to exist, all of these things. But we care about him. He's real to us. We want him to be his own person. And that is the beauty of Days. I wanted to add this as well, that while I didn't really get upset while watching the 358 over 2 days cutscenes, I actually did cry during that scene, Xion's death scene, this time around. And despite the fact that I know that that scene is memed to hell and back, in particularly the "Who else will I have ice cream with" line, I think it was so masterfully done in the way that, that line is the last gut punch that we take for Roxas, because it's just reaffirming the fact that Roxas is a child, essentially. He is a child who is losing his only friend, and, his understanding of the world around him is so simple in the way that, his understanding of what a friend is somebody who has ice cream with him and laughs with him. So he is asking her, who else am I gonna be friends with? Who else am I gonna have? And by delivering the line in that way, it shows that, yeah, Roxas is just a little guy. So while I understand the scene itself can be comedic when taken out of context, I really do like that they stuck with that translation and they did it in that way, because I think it was just really well done. Which brings us to Miss Xion. Guys, I will be 100% honest, I was never a Xion hater, which I know was a very popular opinion back in the day. I'm not gonna say that it was a lot of people, because I'm not about that, but when I looked up stuff about Xion, there was a lot of hate forums for her. But I was definitely very indifferent to Xion. But honestly, you can't really blame me, because the timing of the 358 cutscenes on the 1.5 remake is just 3 hours long, just under 3 hours long. That's it. My playtime on Days was 42 hours when I finished the game. 1.5 I finished in an afternoon. Days I've been playing for the last 3 weeks. In other words, I have had time to marinate with Xion, and y'all, I am no longer indifferent. This is my girl. I adore her. I think the complaints that her introduction is rushed fall flat when playing the actual version of Days, because guys, her introduction with Roxas was so adorable and well done. We see her really come into her own, and I loved Roxas trying to impart Axel's teaching on her right away. He learned this from Axel, and then he was just yeah, this is friendship. I'm gonna teach you. Roxas just wanted to reach out and have that connection, which is just another point of showing us that nobodies have feelings. They wanted to connect with one another. Xion's story at its heart is similar to Roxas in the way that she is also questioning her identity, but her story felt a lot more forceful, if that makes any sense. Roxas himself called himself the, quote, idiot that keeps doing everything he's told, until he eventually rebels at the very end of the game because he gets fed up and wants answers, while Xion, on the other hand, is a lot more active throughout the entire game. Xion faces workplace fucking bullying and harassment from the get-go. She is seen as nothing by Xemnas and Saïx. They refuse to call her a she. They call her it, or broken, or a creature. They call her useless, and they just all around treat her like garbage. And then Riku comes onto the scene, and he calls her a sham and her Keyblade a sham too. Shion's first 150 days of life are her choosing to be who she is, despite the fact that she is seen as just a puppet to everyone except Axel and Roxas. She was a replica of Roxas, but she chooses to be who she is. Which, I should note, some people see Shion's character as a trans allegory, which you can take it that way as well, because Shion was supposed to be a replica of a boy and she chose to be a girl, so you can see it that way as well. And I just really not getting into anything too crazy like that, but Shion's story is choosing to be who you are despite what people say about you. So take that as you will. Anyways, the minute Riku does make contact with Shion, and she meets Sora and Namine and Riku officially, she comes to understand where she came from and decides to return to Sora, despite knowing that no one will remember her. Despite that, Shion still shows us she's her own person with her own agenda. She asks Axel and Namine to look after Roxas, and she asks Roxas to help her correct her mistake of collecting hearts for Xemnas. She insists that even if the memories of her are forgotten, they'll still exist inside Roxas and Sora, and therefore she'll still exist. Shion and Roxas go hand in hand of being the face of growing into your own person, but Shion takes it a step further by being a story of choosing who you want to be and living beyond the confines of what people assume about you, and, taking action when you're in a situation you don't like. Roxas does eventually, but Shion was hacking into computers right off rip. Also, I thought it was really interesting that everyone said that Shion was a reflection of the Kairi in Sora's memories, and Shion is a much softer character than Kairi in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Kairi is a sweetheart, but Kairi also has attitude, and she also has no problem saying whatever she wants and doing whatever she wants, which I thought was interesting that Shion is a little bit more passive, and that's kind of how Sora sees her, but at the same time, Shion did grow into that rebellious streak where she was, saying what she wanted and doing what she wanted. So I think it's also very interesting that she grew into that as well. Because y'all know how I feel about Kairi. I love Kairi as a character, and I think Kairi's character development is very subtle, but it is 100% present, and I'm excited to see what they continue to do with her, because Kairi is actually a character, despite what many people like to say. I digress though. That brings me back to Axel. Guys, I'm going to be so for real with you. Out of the main three, I feel like Axel's character suffers the most from the 1.5 cutscenes. You can make the argument that it's Shion because it's basically her only appearance until 3, and at least Axel has Chain of Memories, Dream Drop Distance, and 2. But I personally grossly misunderstood Axel from just the cutscenes. For one thing, I always thought that Axel didn't like Shion very much, because at first he's a bit weary of her, and then we immediately jump into the meat and potatoes of the game, and then Shion and Axel fight a lot at the end. But that's simply because by not having the in-between mission stuff, I feel like you miss a lot of the things that show how much Axel is drowning under the weight of everything going on. For one thing, if you played only Chain of Memories going into Days, which is generally the suggested order now, seeing as how 1.5 was packaged, we have only seen Axel as a pretty ruthless assassin with very obviously his own agenda. He kills Vexen and Zexion, and then we very quickly learn in Days that those deaths were because he was working essentially under Saïx following his orders. And while Saïx is working for Xemnas, it's also made clear that Saïx has his own agenda too. When we see Axel interacting with Roxas and Shion, we see that he has a side of himself that is very caring and nurturing. He imparts his friendship wisdom onto Roxas and Shion and actually does a lot for both of them. Axel is the one that suggests Roxas works with Shion when she loses the ability to use the Keyblade. And they never would have even gotten away with that in the first place if Axel didn't stick his neck out multiple times and convince Saïx to let them, or switch his missions with one of them to make it happen. Even going as far as to putting strain on his relationship with Saïx because Saïx obviously knows him well enough to tell when he's lying. However, when Saïx interferes and Axel learns that Shion is just a replica of Roxas and that she's a threat to Roxas, we start to see Axel's conflict. Axel wants the same thing Roxas and Shion do. He wants to stay with his friends. He wants to eat ice cream with them and see them every day, and now he's being put into this you can only save one situation and he doesn't know what to do. He hides things from Roxas because, as I said, Axel's always been more of a liar of omission and not a direct liar. And he forcefully brings Shion back to the organization multiple times, all in the interest of keeping things the same. But therein lies the problem with Axel's plan, is that he loves Shion and Roxas too much to make decisions for them. He lets Xion go. He lets Roxas go. He literally tells Xion he can't make decisions for her because to him she's a person, not a puppet. The scene in which he fights Xion all out and tells her that, quote, "You two always do whatever you want, but I'll always be there to bring you back." That scene was one that I always interpreted as Axel just being angry that Xion keeps running off. And I kind of saw it that way because, like I said, I originally thought Axel didn't like Xion all that much. But it's so much more than that. That scene is the culmination of Axel's frustration. He's working against forces like Saïx and Xemnas and Diz, all these big and important people, to protect his friends who are essentially only a year old. They're children. He wants them to stay. He wants them to be safe. He wants his friends. But at the end of the day, he doesn't want to control them, and he can't stop the inevitability of both of them meeting a tragic end. So yes, he's angry, he's frustrated, and he's essentially shaking his kids saying, "I'm trying to protect you, stop doing stupid shit." And I loved looking at it in that way because at the end of the day, he flips between wanting to let them make their own choices, but trying to control them and bring them back and wanting to protect them too. Days made me appreciate just how much Axel really cares about Roxas and Xion and the lengths he went to for them. And honestly, it retroactively made the payout in Kingdom Hearts 3 so much stronger for me and for him in my perspective too. Now I want to talk about Axel, Roxas, and Xion as a trio. And I honestly have to say that while Wayfinder Trio will always be my favorite because I am in so deep for them, Seasalt Trio is the best written group of friends in the series. They are the perfect trio where no one member feels less important than any other. They all grow together, suffer together, and their character arcs all allow us to see each of them shine. The game struck a beautiful balance of the three of them, and I honestly could watch the three of them just doing stupid shit together all day long. And that takes me to non-sea salt people, and I'm gonna start off with Saïx. Okay, if Axel is the main character that suffers the most from not having the in-between mission stuff, then I think Saïx is the side character that suffers the most. When playing Kingdom Hearts 3, not only had it been a very long time since I watched the 358 cutscenes, but also, like I said, I hadn't actually played the game. And honestly, because of that, Saïx was such a bland character for me. And the fact that he got to hang out with the Sea Salt Trio at the end was really random for me because I was like, yo, wasn't this guy a bully? Because I remembered him being kind of a dick. Yeah, and I don't want to dispute any of that because, yeah, he was an asshole and he did do really shitty things. Don't get me wrong. But Days adds a lot more depth into his actions that, in my opinion, makes it much easier for me to understand why Axel in specific would forgive him and by proxy try to convince Roxas and Xion to do the same. With context from Birth by Sleep, we know that Axel and Saïx were childhood friends that joined the organization together. We can also surmise directly from Days that Saïx, much like Marluxia and Larxene, they both had another goal with the organization, Saïx and Axel I mean. Hence why Saïx ordered Axel to do a bunch of things, but when asked by Axel directly if those orders came from Xemnas, Saïx wouldn't give the answer, so obviously he has his own agenda. Then, we also take the context of the fact that all of the other organization members and Diz, and basically all of the other characters except Xion and Roxas, believed that nobodies were never supposed to exist, much less replicas who are puppets with no will of their own. Day's entire goal as a game is to basically disprove the prejudice against nobodies and replicas. However, Saïx thinks this. He thinks that nobodies and replicas are not real. That's why he wants to, control Kingdom Hearts, and that's why he treats Xion the way he does. Which again, not saying it's okay, but it's important to understand this when we look at his actions. First of all, Axel is Saïx's only friend, and presumably Axel never really hid anything from Saïx, again, because why would he? Then, all of a sudden, this special nobody comes along and they click. But whatever, right? Roxas is a nobody, but he's still almost the same as both of them. And yeah, having a Keyblade wielder as a friend might be beneficial. But then, he makes friends with a puppet. Saïx can't see her face for the entire game. Xion is not a person to him, which is wrong. Let me make it very clear that it's wrong for him to think this. But now, all of a sudden, his only friend is hiding things from him and purposefully meddling with their plans in order to save a puppet and a nobody that shouldn't exist. So yeah, Saix is jealous, and he treats Shion like garbage. And is he still a douchebag bullying a baby? Yes! Is he completely wrong by assuming Shion is not a person, and therefore he can say and treat her however he likes? Hell yes! Do I think it will be interesting to see whether or not Roxas and Shion actually forgive him in the future, or if there's always going to be bad blood there? Yes, I do! But now, I understand him. He's an asshole I can understand. And when I remember that Axel also acted selfishly and hurt Shion and Roxas in an attempt to keep them with him, I realized that it makes sense why Axel's able to sympathize and forgive him in Kingdom Hearts 3, especially with the little thing that was added in Kingdom Hearts 3 where apparently the reason why Saix and Axel joined the organization was because they were looking for a third friend. So then there's like that little nuance to him as well. Days was the missing piece for me to have a better understanding of Saix's character, and I'm excited to see where he goes in the next arc because they obviously do have ties to the next arc because of what I said about like this strange, mysterious third person. Next up is Xigbar. Y'all, I don't know how people can think that Kingdom Hearts is written stupidly or inconsistently when characters like Xigbar exist. Like y'all, in the original Days, in 2009, it shows Xigbar's connections with Ventus, and even the way he talks in a way that's so like, ooh, I know more than I'm letting on. Him being the one in the Colosseum simply because he wanted to test Roxas was just really cool to me as well. Like, Xigbar just does not give a fuck, and he's such a fun uncle, but the way he's written is so masterfully done in the way that it's like, oh my god, this guy knows stuff. And I will say, this game just did a lot for all of the organization members, like, especially the non-Castle Oblivion ones, because, like, they die really early. But, like, getting to hang out with characters like Demyx and Luxord and, like, Zaldin and stuff, it, like, really humanizes them, and, like, it further adds that whole, like, oh yeah, like, these are just people. And finally, that brings me to Riku, who I wanted to talk about last. First of all, I wanted to re-mention that the way that Riku was introduced in this game was just a master stroke. By waiting until day 149, basically halfway through our timeline, to even mention him, the game gave us essentially a full 15 to 20 hours with Roxas, Axel, and Shion to come to want them to succeed and them to get what they want. If they had introduced Riku too early, we would have completely disregarded Roxas and Shion because we know that Riku was trying to save Sora, who is the real hero. But again, because they waited so long, we had time to feel conflict. We want Sora to come back, yes, but at the same time, Roxas and Shion not only have to die, essentially, but also Shion will be completely forgotten. So now we're like, ooh, now it's a tougher decision. We feel conflict, we feel emotions. It was just really beautifully well done. Also, I think Days was a really great showing of Riku's character. He's not in it all that much, but like the few scenes he is in, he owns. We see he's chilled out a lot since Kingdom Hearts 1. He has this air of sadness about him, which makes sense because not only is he lonely and missing Sora, but he's also dealing with the darkness inside him and wrestling with that. Not to mention, he still feels guilty for the events of Kingdom Hearts 1 in the first place. Sora is definitely Riku's thing too precious to lose, and I love that Days shows the lengths Riku will go to for Sora, while also showing that unlike so many of the characters around him, like the organization and Diz, Riku also cares about Roxas and Shion as people. We see this in particular with Shion. He wins Shion over with sympathy. He talks with her in an honest way and expresses his own feelings and puts the decision in her hands. And honestly, I feel like Riku was the first person to really treat Shion like an adult. First, like a real person and like an adult, like simultaneously. Because while Axel does see Shion as like a real person and Roxas as a real person, he also does do things in a way like he hides things from them because he wants to protect them. But like Riku was the first person to like look at her, talk to her, lay everything out on the table in an honest way, and he puts the decision in her hands and just hopes that she makes the right decision, which is conveniently, the decision that Riku also wanted. But on the flip side, away from Shion, Riku is not afraid to fight when he has to, which we see him do with Roxas. Like, Riku said to Mickey he might die during that fight. Riku was ready to die if it meant that Sora got to wake up. Anyways, Riku is my goat, so Riku is my ship, but only when considering strictly canon, because I'm always going to be Vaniku's one and only fan for life. Thank you. And that brings me to the gameplay section. As I mentioned earlier, the only thing I knew about this game was that it was incredibly janky and played really badly, so naturally I played it on proud mode because I had to see if that was true or not. Honestly, it's not as bad as everyone says. My lock-on button was actually broken for like the first half of the game. And even with that handicap, I still didn't really find the game to be like all that janky. Like, it was fine to me. So I don't know if people specifically are talking about the challenges or something, because I haven't finished all of them. But like, in terms of like the actual main story, like, I didn't find any of it to be incredibly difficult. And like, I cleared all of the missions fully, like full bar, and I got all of I got all of the collectibles too. So I don't know. But at the same time, because I don't want to discredit anyone, and I will say though, like, I feel like a lot of people's opinions on Days stemmed from like them playing it as kids and teenagers, which is also valid, because like once you become an adult, like your ability to play games just becomes better most of the time. So I'm not gonna shut on anyone too hard for thinking Days was really difficult, because at the same time, holy shit, sometimes I would go into a mission and I would be playing it and I would be like, I get it. Like, just the boss ones. Like, there was this boss in Halloween Town, the Leech Graver. And that was the first mission, and I think that was like day 300, where I was just like, I understand why people are saying this game is jank now. So, yeah, and all of the fights where you had to fly, I didn't really like those ones either. Like, those were the only times when I was like, okay, yeah, I see it, but like, yeah, if you're hesitant to play Days because you feel like it's really janky, I am here to reassure you it is not that bad. Some other gameplay type things. I thought the bottom screen being used to show us like the comparisons between Sora and Roxas was really cool. And I also really loved how certain characters, like the Magic Carpet, recognized Roxas as Sora. It's like the magical things couldn't be fooled by a different face. But at the same time, it's nice that not everyone did recognize him as Sora. Like, Phil and the genie and stuff just met him as Roxas, and like Phil and Roxas's relationship in particular, I actually did really love, and I really loved the whole like Roxas learning about how at first he thought expectations are just orders, but then he learned that like expectations are like having faith in someone, and I thought that was like really touching, and just like I'm kind of very back into talking about Roxas's character. Roxas's character is very touching, his relationships are very great, but I'm not here to talk about that. So the last mechanical thing was the panel system, which I actually really enjoyed. So basically you could install different panels, so like your level ups, your different spells, your different movement keys, your different weapons. And I don't know how I never really read anything about how people felt about the panel system, but I personally really loved it. I loved like putting that much thought into my like set for each mission, and like, you know, which magic to bring and like what items to bring and stuff like that. Like, it really gave me like that sense of like, oh yeah, like I'm strategizing right now, and I really, really liked it. So yeah, all in all, like, it plays like a regular Kingdom Hearts game, except for the panel system is different, which I really enjoyed. I really liked the mission system as well. I thought it was a great way like to tell the story. I didn't find it tedious at all. So yeah, gameplay was really good. It was much better than I was expecting. And that brings me to the side stuff and extra stuff, aka the exploration, because there wasn't really any actual exploration in this game, because like I said, it was the mission system. So basically each mission had treasures to find, which was always fun. And then also there was the badges. So basically there was a Unity badge for almost every mission, which basically gave you the mission to be available in mission mode. And then there was the Ordeal badges and the Ordeal blazons, which unlocked certain challenges for you. So I found all of those because I'm a completionist, and I was like, I'm gonna catch them all. And yeah, as I mentioned, there was mission mode where you could play as like any of the organization members, and I didn't spend much time on mission mode, but I actually thought it was really fun, and I think it would be even more fun if like I was playing in the heyday when you could play multiplayer, because I feel like teaming up with people as like different organization members to do the missions just would have been really fun, like just a really fun time. And I'm sad that I have like nobody to do that with, but I actually thought that was a really cool addition. And then finally there are the challenges, as I mentioned. Yeah, so basically the challenges are like basically the regular missions, but they add like certain like confines to it. So like basically there's a few different kinds of missions in the game. So there's like collect all of the hearts kind of thing, like that's one. And then there's like recon missions, and then there's like collect organization emblems, and then there's like the boss missions. So like there's a few different types. There's enough that, like I said, I don't find the missions to be tedious at all. I actually did really enjoy that system. But then they would add like confines. Like the most common one is like finish it in record time, which some of them is like kind of annoying. But yeah, like I said, I haven't done all the challenges yet. That's like my next thing that I'm working on. But yeah, they're there, and they're like an extra thing to do as well, which is fun. And and then there's Roxas's Diaries, which you unlock throughout the series, the game, like throughout the game, like as you play the game, like they're the just like an extra file you can read, which I really liked Roxas's Diaries. I feel like they gave a lot of insight into Roxas's thoughts and stuff like that, and like honestly they're kind of a good enough summary too. Like if you kind of reread them, you can kind of piece together what's going on. But then finally, the last interesting thing was after you beat the game, you unlock the opposite diaries, which are basically entries written by members of the organization. And I have never read these before because I didn't notice that they were in 1.5. If they were, I don't remember them being in 1.5, but I might have just never like reopened them after finishing the game, so I don't really remember them. And my sister didn't remember them either, but I was like really excited when I was reading them because it actually does give some crazy insight into some of the organization members, and I thought they were just a really cool addition. So yeah, that's all of the extra stuff in Days. And now I need to touch on the music, as I always do. You know what I'm going to say, though. The music in Kingdom Hearts is always fantastic. I love Xion's theme, Musique pour la tristesse de Xion. Vector to the Heavens is a banger. Roxas' theme isn't for this game, but I love Roxas' theme. And I actually do really love the New Neverland tracks for them. They're both like really catchy, and I really like both of them. And I did notice that they actually changed a few of the songs in the 1.5 version. So like for example, I'm not even gonna say almost, because it's basically every single time you're on the clock tower it plays At Dusk I Will Think of You. And I actually pulled up a scene that I was watching at the same time on like my DS, and I noticed that they changed At Dusk I Will Think of You to one of these sadder songs. And I didn't really like that because I feel like At Dusk I Will Think of You is a very nostalgic and homey song. It's like it basically fits like the vibes of the Sea Salt Trio perfectly. But I think by changing it to a sad song, especially in the scene that they did because it was one of the ones about Xion, I feel like that plays the ending, because like I said, like we know going in that Xion and Roxas it's a tragedy. We don't need to be constantly reminded of it, because then you're gonna build that block between us and connecting to the character, because we know something bad's gonna happen to them. So by like playing the sad music every time, it was kind of like, oh okay, something's gonna happen, and I didn't like that. I thought it played the ending. So I do like in Days that they keep At Dusk I Will Think of You for the most part. And the other thing I wanted to add for the music is, like, despite the fact that I am kind of like, oh, why did they change it? And it, like, plays the end. At the same time, I do understand why they did it, because most of the cutscenes that they do adapt are the ones that are on the clock tower. So if they kept the music the same and just played At Dusk I Will Think of You the whole time, it would have probably gotten boring and repetitive for the player. So, like, I do get it, but at the same time, I really do like the music choice in the original better than the cutscenes. But yeah, that's just me. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. Da-da-da-da. So I didn't really write down any random thoughts, but I did, however, I really wanted to write my first not my first impressions, but all of the organization members that had a mission with Roxas, like their first impression of Roxas, because I thought it would be funny to reflect on. So Axel was friendly, he was like a mentor, he was a cool dude. Knowing what I know about Axel and Saïx kind of makes this game even more of a gut punch, because like when Roxas and Xion were questioning him about what it's like to have a best friend, and he said he didn't know because he didn't have one, and like knowing that in Birth by Sleep Aiza and Lee were besties, I kind of was like, oh damn, like there's a falling out there. Then Marluxia was civil, and he was kind of friendly, but he was friendly like in the same way like Mother Gothel's friendly. Like he only ever really showed affection to like the Keyblade in the same way like Mother Gothel only ever shows affection to Rapunzel's hair. Like he was Mother Gotheling me, and I didn't like that. Next was Zexion. My relationship with Zexion, like as Adrian, is so complicated because like guys, I hated this man with a fiery passion the first time I played Calm, but then I replayed Calm and I was like, he's not that bad. Why did I hate him so much? But guys, he was so passive-aggressive to Roxas. Like, Zexion, you literally were the baby before Roxas. Calm down, dude. But it was so funny. I feel like Zexion's passive-aggressiveness is perfect for, like, Roxas to show off his sass. Because, like, when Zexion was explaining that he and Roxas were nobodies, Roxas was just like, well, that's not very nice. At the same time, though, Zexion also did give Roxas time to ask whatever questions he wanted, which was nice of him and was more than some of the other members did for him. And that brings me to Larxene. She behaves about as well as we all expect. She was a total bitch. I love the way she antagonizes everyone though. It's so funny. Her and Demyx beefing, like, it was always like my favorite thing. It was so funny to me. And next up is Vexen. I really expected Vexen to be a total tool like he is in Chain of Memories, but he was actually surprisingly decent to Roxas in like a tough love kind of way. Like, he had his snarky comments and whatever, but he did praise him when he did well, and I didn't really expect that from Vexen, to be honest. And that brings me to Lexaeus. I honestly wasn't really sure what to make of Lexaeus at first because he like barely talks. And while he did in a very comical way smack Roxas to teach him about limit breaks, which was kind of rude, he also was just like chill with Roxas asking whatever. Although he did also reply very like cryptically. Those were the ones that you did like your introductory missions with, because the rest of them you kind of spend time with them as you go. But as I mentioned, Xaldin, like, did somebody hurt you, Xaldin? Because like, why are you so like, you know, why are you the way you are? And I feel like I actually kind of feel, I wish that they did more with Demyx and Luxord in this game. I feel like both of them could have definitely used more oomph, but I feel like they're keeping both those characters under wraps because they're gonna be relevant later. Because like Demyx and Luxord are both very surface level in this game. Like, while each of the organization members, you kind of get a little bit more glimpse into what they're like and things they like and like people they're close to. Like, Luxord is so cryptic in this game and only ever really talks about what's going on and like in that way that he does. And then Demyx is really just played off as this like one note lazy bones. So like neither of them really like they're both so secretive, and I'm like, I want to know more about both of you. Oh my god. And yeah, that's basically all of the organization members. So yeah, that is all of my thoughts on Days. This was kind of a very long ramble. I'm pretty sure this is my longest video to date. But in conclusion, I loved Days so much. The game is really fun. I love the use of the mission system to tell the story. I love the panels. I loved Roxas, Xion, and Axel and how their friendship was presented up until the end. It's just a beautiful story about friendship and love and finding and choosing who you are despite what people around you say about you. So yeah, go find yourself a copy of Days and play the whole game because it is worth it. Even if you've watched this video, I have not told you everything about what goes on, and literally every single micro interaction is just adds so much more to like the organization and to the characters, and just it's great. Just trust me, go play it. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.